Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever the case may be. Welcome to Way Offsides. We got a lot to talk about. It's A-Day week, which means there's a ton of football talk coming out of Tuscaloosa. Everybody always looks forward to A-Day, even with the different format this year. A lot of folks are on their way as I'm recording this to Tuscaloosa. Our very own Way Offsides. Chris will be there. If you see him, be sure to give him a pat on the back. He might have something for you. We'll see. But spring camp has been pretty interesting this year. A lot of the talk has revolved around the quarterback room, what that's going to look like. We've heard a lot out of this spectacular 2025 recruiting class. These young guys coming in, stepping up, doing big things. Dijon Lee's a big name. But one of the other big names that we've seen a lot from is wide receiver Lotzier Brooks. Now, we've been talking about Lotzier for over a year. He was an under the radar guy in his recruiting class. A lot of these recruiting agencies, I think, got it wrong with Lotzier. He's showing that now in Tuscaloosa. He's just the guy is he's absolutely insane. It's if you've seen any of the film tape coming out of spring camp, it's pretty nasty work what Lotzier is doing. Because of him, it's got a lot of people are talking, and we hinted towards this during our live this week. A lot of people are talking about Alabama's wide receiving room as a whole. Now, this is a position group where Alabama has seen a massive amount of turnover since 2021. I believe it was the 2022 class. As of last year, there were no guys left on the roster from that 2022 class. Everybody had transferred out. Those who were still there transferred out when Nick Saban left with NIL, the transfer portal. You know how that goes. People just bounce if they're not playing. But there's a reason that a lot of these guys aren't playing. And that reason is simply because the wide receiving room is stacked at Alabama. And friends, this year, it definitely remains the same. Alabama's receiving room is potentially, I say potentially, but I'm going to go ahead and call it. I think Alabama's receiving room as a whole, as an entire unit, will be the best in the country in 2025. You know, some people are throwing out wideouts 2.0. That's a lofty statement, but this group of guys is extremely special. Obviously, it's headlined by now sophomore, the 18-year-old Ryan Williams, who just had an amazing freshman campaign in Tuscaloosa. It kind of faded off towards the end of the season with some of the issues between him and Jalen Milroe. You know, Milroe kind of having some struggles distributing the ball. But let's take a look at what this cast around Ryan Williams. The first name that comes to mind is the Miami transfer, who's been making a lot of noise. He's also been very verbal this spring, promising Alabama fans that they've got the guys, they've got the core guys they need to get this job done. And that is going to be redshirt junior Isaiah Horton, 6'4", 209 pounds, big body wide receiver. If you haven't watched any tape on Horton at Miami, I suggest you do that. Horton is already making a lot of noise this spring. And I mean, you don't bring a guy like that in if he's not going to play. Horton will 100% be playing alongside Ryan Williams, the sophomore. Another guy that a lot of people are kind of forgetting about, and it's kind of almost like the cherry on top of this wide receiving class, is senior Jeremy Bernard. Now, Jeremy Bernard, we all know, followed Kalen DeBoer from Washington. And Bernard really came on strong late in the season. It felt like Milroe was struggling and a lot of times forcing to get the ball to Ryan Williams. And once he kind of was able to calm down, he was distributing the ball a lot to Bernard, showed up big in the Iron Bowl, right? Bernard is a sure-handed guy. He's a pretty crisp route runner, I think. And he is a great complement to these more explosive guys. Not to say that Bernard can't take the top off of a defense, because he absolutely can. But Bernard is definitely complementary to the other guys that Alabama has in the room. Now, some other names that were impactful at times last year. There were some injuries there, especially with redshirt sophomore Cole Adams. Now, this is a shorter type back. This is kind of like your Edelman type guy. He's only 5'10". He's 185 pounds. I believe we all remember him hurting his arm last year. But Cole Adams is another one of those short-handed guys that everybody's been talking about a lot. in combination with Mr. Rico Scott, the freshman. He's 6 foot 195 out of Pennsylvania. Rico is he's flashy, man. He's very flashy, and I expect to see him get plenty of time in that wide receiving rotation this year. Now, let's go back to Lotzier Brooks. Lotzier Brooks is the one that everybody's very high on. Everybody's talking about right now. If you have not seen the footage yet, look on our shorts when you're done here. While you're there, be sure to subscribe if you're not subscribed already. But Lotzier Brooks is going to be the next great one at Alabama. And him in combination with Ryan Williams is what's making everybody say wideouts 2.0. It's kind of got that Jerry Jeudy, Henry Ruggs feel. But to me, what I'm seeing, and maybe it's just because he's wearing the same number, but what I'm seeing out of Lotzier Brooks is he looks a lot like Jalen Waddle. In some instances, he looks a lot like Will Oakley, but he looks a lot like Jalen Waddle. That should scare opposing defenses. It really should. But the one name that I want everybody to remember, because there's another guy that nobody's talking about, is Derek Meadows. And Derek Meadows, he's a true freshman. We thought last year that Alabama was going to use Caleb Odom, that big body receiver, in a goal line package, you throw it up to the end zone. I think potentially that was the plan at some point, but it kind of just didn't work. We saw Jalen Milroe throw some nasty picks in the end zone. Alabama did not perform well outside of running the ball with Milroe in the red zone last year. And it's because they weren't able to utilize guys like Caleb Odom. Well, Caleb Odom leaves, goes to Ole Miss, but now you've got Derek Meadows. He was originally committed to LSU. When Bryce Underwood flipped his commitment to Michigan, Meadows wound up at Alabama, and he's going to be able to fill that slot that Odom left. I think he's a little bit better than Odom. I think he adds he's what, 6'6", so you're going to have big body, big frame wide receiver. He'll be very valuable in red zone possessions. Now, that sounds good enough, right? That sounds good enough to get you excited about what Alabama's going to be able to do through the air, especially when you consider that they've brought in Ryan Grubb, that offensive coordinator who had those crazy first-round receiver numbers at Washington. But then you start taking a look at the roster and you realize there's somebody else that people are forgetting. There's somebody else that people aren't talking about. And most of you who follow the show very closely or follow Alabama football closely already know who I'm about to say, and that's redshirt sophomore Jalen Hale. Jalen Hale went out to a nasty leg injury prior to the season last year. Very unfortunate. But he has been rehabbing and working his way back. We posted a video a few months back. The team, it was the first person POV of the team running out of the tunnel. And you see Jalen Hale, he's not in pads, but he's jumping around and running, and it just looks natural. He looks like he's back to normal. Jalen Hale, I think, is going to be a big X factor for Alabama, depending on how he plays coming off of that injury. I think Jalen Hale could be that Henry Ruggs type guy. He's going to get a lot of looks, and he's going to work himself up into the first round, and he'll complement Jeremy Bernard. He'll complement Lotzier Brooks. He'll complement Ryan Williams extremely well. I'm really excited to see Jalen Hale. I thought Jalen Hale was going to be the guy last year. I really did. And I think if he wouldn't have gotten hurt, he probably would have been. I'm not saying that Ryan Williams wouldn't have played, because obviously, he's Ryan Williams. He's going to play, right? But Jalen Hale would have definitely been one of the premier features at wide receiver last season had he foregone that injury. So there you have it. Alabama's wide receiving core is stacked leading into 2025. And of course, the question becomes, who's going to throw these guys the ball? Assuming that you've got a quarterback in there. I think Alabama's got three options right now they're very, very comfortable with. And how Alabama mixes it up using the running backs out of the backfield and the tight ends. Alabama's going to have a pretty solid group of tight ends this year. They're going to be young, but they're going to be solid, right? So And then, I mean, even if you go outside of those names that we're talking about, I could talk about this for hours, but you've got guys like Bubba Hampton. There's just so many guys that aren't being talked about who are at other schools, could be day one starters. I say that with a lot of hesitancy. Don't jump in the portal. Uh, but, you may lose some of these guys to the portal, but Alabama is just, they're a lot more stacked than they should be right now, to be honest, with Nick Saban leaving and what everybody else outside of the Alabama, social media group or world would tell you. The only person I really have heard that has kind of said it like it is Josh Pate. Alabama is in a very good position to be one of the most talented, if not the most talented team in 2025. And that's not just at the wide receiving position. Alabama, like years past, even under Nick Saban, is full of 5-star and 4-star recruits, right? Who are going to be starting. Depth is going to be an issue nowadays with anybody because of the portal and NIL, but Alabama's got it where it counts. They do, especially at the wide receiving position. So I think I don't have a ton of problems with people during the preseason saying that Alabama's going to have the best wide receiving unit in the country. I'm okay with it. And usually I'm pretty standoffish about stuff like that. I'm sure Ohio State fans will have something to say about that. They've got a great track record with wide receivers, as does LSU. But Alabama's wide receiving core this year is going to be something magical, very special. And if you get the right guy throwing the ball to them, look out. Just look out. So tell me what you think. Are we hyping this wide receiving group up too much? Do you think it's there? What do you think is the most? Who do you think in this group is going to be that X factor? Obviously, Ryan Williams is going to do his thing, right? But who's going to be that surprise in 2025 that's just going to pop up and make a name for himself, make himself some money? Who's it going to be? So, while you're over there, leave that comment. But while you're over there, please, if you haven't yet, please subscribe. Also, while you're subscribing, if you don't mind, share us. If you're in Facebook groups, especially sports groups, things like that. X, we're very active on X. Be sure to share us everywhere. It helps people realize who we are, where we are. Tell your friends and your family about us. So, as always, you know the drill. Please say your prayers, read your Bibles, wash your hands. Horns down, guys. Beat Auburn and LSU and Tennessee too. Roll Tide.